pleasure to have Nuran Sykes here with us to speak on women in Islam. Her lecture is on the topic that is widely misunderstood by non-Muslim and Muslim communities around the globe. Discover the powerful positions Muslim women held in all spheres of life and the respect that is due to them through the Islamic paradigm. Nuran was born in Cape Town, South Africa. She was one of 9 Catholic children. At the age of 20, she decided to take a run with the nuns to see what that vocation could fulfill, if that vocation could fulfill her connection with the Almighty. After much soul searching, Nuran realized that having a family was something she yearned for and needed. She met her husband. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, Abdurrahman.
Okay.
That's good.
She'll tell you his name. Her husband of 40 years. They married and moved to the United States in 1986, and she has never looked back. She embraced Islam in 1989 and is committed to this beautiful faith of peace, love, and inclusivity. Please join me in welcoming Nuran Sykes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I can put it in my pocket? I'm good? Okay. As-salamu alaykum. I come to you with a greeting of peace this morning. So the topic of Muslim women. The more I contemplate and ponder over this topic, I wonder if other traditions and faiths endure the scrutiny and pain that Muslim women do. Abdurrahman and I present in colleges often, and the question is guaranteed: why are Muslim women oppressed? If I could change the conversation of Muslim women, I would say Muslim women are not traditionally submissive. Muslim women are not oppressed. And Muslim women are not a monolith. We have many different facets to our identity. It would be naive to have the expectation that today's conversation will change your perception of us being less than. However, I would like to usher in a new narrative that will give women in our tradition the dignity God has ordained and commanded for us. At a time when the rest of the world, from Greece and Rome to India and China, considered women as no better than children or even slaves with no rights whatsoever, Islam acknowledged women's equality with men in a great many respects. We're talking about over 1,400 years ago. The Quran states in Surah Ar-Rum, chapter 30, verse 21, and among his signs is this, that he created mates for you from yourselves, that you may find rest and repose in them. And he ordained between you love and mercy. Certainly, here indeed are signs for people who reflect. The two sources that Muslims adhere to are the Quran, which is our holy book, and the Hadith, which is the tradition or the sayings of the Prophet. This is a Hadith from the Prophet. The most perfect in faith amongst believers is he who is best in manners and kindness to his wife, and I am the best to my wives. There are so many women role models, but I have to start with our mother of humanity, Eve. Not to take anything away from their devotion, but the Christian outlook blames Eve. In Islam, they both sinned repented, and amended. Eve was not the evil temptress. Both were instructed not to eat from that tree, and both partook. One of the most visible symbols of Muslim women's identity is the hijab or headscarf, and that's the second question that we get asked in the colleges. So one of the most visible symbols of Muslim women's identity is the hijab or headscarf, which is part of the broader Islamic principle of modesty. The Quran instructs both men and women to be modest. It says in the Quran in chapter 24:31, to avoid drawing attention to their physical appearance. It also says in this chapter to draw the veil, and the Arabic word is called kamar. We call it hijab, which is perfectly fine, but it says to take the kamar and pull it across your bosom. In that time of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, the women actually did wear headscarves, but they tied it behind their head and then they were bare-chested. The revelation came to change that. However, the practice of covering varies widely across diverse cultures and countries. Some women wear the hijab while others choose to cover more completely with garments such as the niqab or the burqa. Now, I have been Muslim these many years. We have read the Quran several times, many times, and have never come across a verse that actually tells us to cover our faces. God bless the women that do. I do admire them. There is ongoing debate within and outside the Muslim world about the meaning and significance of the hijab. While many Muslims view it as a symbol of faith, piety, and identity, others see it as a potential tool of oppression, particularly to context where wearing it is mandated by law. In Islam, there is no coercion. The women that wear it choose to wear it, or should be able to choose to wear it. Their husbands cannot force them to do this. And I have to say this, that women that wear the hijab, it's not necessarily indicative of their piety. I have met women across the world that do not, that I consider wonderful sisters. It is important to distinguish the cultural enforcement of dress codes and the personal voluntary choice to wear it, which many Muslim women affirm as an empowering expression of their faith. I have to just throw out a short story about the hijab, because when I embraced Islam, it took me 3 years to actually wear it. One of the most difficult choices I have ever made. I approached Abdurrahman, my husband, and I said to him, about 6 months into my reversion, I said, can you tell me about the hijab? He said, do you really want to know? And I said, I think so. He said, well, if I give you the verses in the Quran, you are accountable. So, do you really want to know? I said, no. Please, do not tell me about it. And 3 years later, I made this journey. It is a mistake for Muslims to believe that men are superior to women, or that men have the right to control women or dictate to them. This attitude is completely contrary to the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, who consulted his wives in many matters, including those related to his position as head of state. I have to tell you another story about the hijab. I think one of the reasons why I struggled to put it on, because I was worried about the response I was going to be faced with. And I have been faced with responses that I probably do not want to share today. I am an avid pickleball player, and my very first tournament I played in, I walked into the facility. I'm never early. That day I was. There were two young people, a male and a female, sitting at the desk to register people. And I walked up and I said, "Good morning, I'm here to register." And they both stared at me like I was an alien. They did not move their pens. I said, "I'm serious. I'm here to register. My partner is coming." And it was the scariest feeling I'd had. It actually shook me up because I knew what I was going to be facing. In chapter 33, verse 35, the Quran translates, "Indeed, the Muslim men and Muslim women, the believing men and the believing women, the obedient men and the obedient women, the truthful men and the truthful women, the patient men and the patient women, the humble men and the humble women, the charitable men and the charitable women, the fasting men and the fasting women, the men who guard their private parts and the women who do so, and the men who remember God often, and the women who do so. For them, God has prepared forgiveness and a great reward." Despite the fact that in many places and times, Muslim communities have not always adhered to all or even many of the foregoing in practice, the ideal has been there for over 1400 years. While virtually all the other major civilizations did not begin to address these issues or even change their negative attitudes until the 19th or 20th century. And there are still many contemporary civilizations which have yet to do so. Women started voting in the United States on the 26th of August, 1920. This is 105 years ago. Muslim women were allowed to vote over 1400 years ago in Islam. So why are we getting the bad rap? Britain in 1860 passed Married Women Property Act. There is no restriction in Islamic law saying women cannot work or have a profession. As a matter of fact, it is highly recommended for women to have female physicians. We were in a community in Orlando, and there are over 300 physicians in that community, and a third of those physicians are women. Now, if I worked outside of the house, whatever I earned is mine. Whatever Abdurrahman earns is mine as well. So it worked out pretty well for me. There is a hadith, remember, tradition or saying of the Prophet, whereby a man was sitting with the Prophet and his daughter entered the room. He greeted her. But when his son entered the room, he stood up, kissed his son on the forehead, and put him in his lap. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, mentioned to the man that this is an injustice to his daughter. Now, our Prophet's youngest daughter, Fatima, when she came into the room, he would get up, he would kiss her on her forehead, and he would put her on his lap. There are many hadith that mention women and their high status in Islam. For a dedicated Muslim, be it male or female, the ultimate goal is to seek the pleasure of God and to fulfill one's duties on this earth as his trustee. The first wife of the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was Khadijah. He was 25 years old. She was 40. She was not a virgin, as they'd like people to believe. She approached or sent somebody to the prophet to ask for his hand in marriage. He worked for her. He traded for her. And because of his honesty and truthfulness, she didn't stalk him, but she definitely went after him. She was a successful businesswoman who also supported the prophet with her wealth. She was socially conscious and her business dealings were fair. She was honest and kind to her employees. She also defied stereotypes by marrying the prophet and continuing to work and be successful after marriage. She, the wife of 25 years, the mother of the believers. The first person to embrace Islam. Khadijah had someone approach the prophet, as I said. And so this notion that women cannot choose their husband is refuted right here. The prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, came as a liberator. From the very inception, there is a hadith, a tradition regarding daughters, 1 or 2 daughters. If we take care of them well, we are promised paradise, and our daughters are actually shields for us on the day of judgment. I've got to mention some other women that inspired me while reading about this topic. A woman named Shifa bint Abdullah, the strong, intelligent woman whom Omar, he was the second companion, second Khalifa, and companion of the Prophet, appointed a policewoman in Mecca to work in the marketplace. She walked around with a stick. I have this vision that tickles me, keeping the peace and reprimanding those that were violating the business transaction laws of the Sharia. Imagine that. A woman that was so knowledgeable of the Sharia that she was chosen from all the other companions to police both men and women. In fact, when they were looking for a police person in Mecca, Omar chose another woman. Her name was Samra, and she was hired because she was suitable for the job. These women were sought based upon their qualifications and not their gender. Now, sometimes I've heard that women are not allowed to work outside their home. This example paints a whole different narrative for us. They were strong, confident, intelligent. Nusayba, the female warrior who courageously defended the Prophet in several battles. The one whom the Prophet said about her at the Battle of Uhud, "Whenever I looked to the right and the left, I saw her fighting in front of me." The one whom the Prophet asked from, "Where can anyone get courage like you, Amara?" Rufayda bint Sayyid was the first female nurse in Islamic history. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, ordered the wounded and dying to be sent to her tent during the battles, learning medical knowledge from her father. God bless her father, because he saw her potential. She became an expert in the medical field and began training other women companions to become nurses as well. She was known as a kind, empathic healer, as well as a compassionate social worker who took care of orphans, the handicapped, and the poor. In the West, we have objectification and sexualization of women. Islam paints an amazing picture. Rarely in other religions do we judge their failures by their faith. The problem is, we as Muslims have people judge us by what we do and not what Islam teaches. We have to go back to the history of Islam. I have to also close by saying today, I have to read a poem from Rumi, my favorite poet. Woman is a beam of the divine light. She is not the being whom sensual desires take as its object. She is creator, it should be said. She is not a creature. Great Fatima ul-Zahra means of Fatima, the radiant, brightest star, star of Venus, the evening star, the daughter of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is the secret in Sufism. She is the Hujjat of Ali. In other words, she establishes the esoteric sense of his knowledge and guides those who attain to it. Through her perfume, we breathe paradise. Though she was his daughter, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, called her Abiya, the mother of her father. What mystery was the Prophet hinting at by the statement? While Fatima Zahra was Muhammad's daughter, the spiritual Fatima al-Batul, the divine virgin, her house is the living Kaaba. Now the Kaaba is in Mecca that we pray at once in our lifetime. It's part of the pilgrimage. And this is how Rumi wanted us to see women. I thank you all for being here today, and God bless all, and peace to everyone.
Would you be willing to take some questions?
Oh, I will be willing to take some questions, yes. I'd love that.
Hello. Okay, great. Good morning. My name is Kevin, and I enjoyed your presentation. I noticed early on that you were speaking about what the Quran says, and you also mentioned the fact that there are different cultural interpretations in a sense. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more in terms of, I don't know if it's what we've seen, say, in the United States, perhaps media manipulations. What comes to mind, for example, is the incident in Iran where there was a woman who, according to the media, was arrested for not wearing her hijab, and died in jail. Can you elaborate, not specifically on that, but the cultural differences or how different societies may interpret the Quran?
First of all, it cannot be mandated for women to wear the hijab in any country that is highly populated by Muslims. It is our personal choice. Even though the Quran says that we are to cover, we still have a choice. There is no coercion in religion. So when they are mandating women to wear the hijab, and in this case, this lady, it is unethical, inappropriate, and actually sinful. But you're talking about culture. We think of Afghanistan and Malala Yousafzai that was shot because she wanted to have the knowledge and wanted to study. This is against Islam. But this gets so much press release that women, normal women, I'm going to say, do not get the press like she did. And that was a horrible, horrible incident, because it says in the Quran, men and women. And the Prophet, actually, there's a hadith that says that we should gain knowledge from the cradle to the grave. This is men and women. So what they did was just wrong on every level.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did I answer your question, Kevin? Thank you.
Peace be upon you.
Oh, peace be upon you.
Does Allah have a gender?
Allah does not have a gender. It is not gender specific. No. That was a very short answer. I don't know how to elaborate.
I understand, tell me if this is right, that the Quran mentions Mary, mother of Jesus, at greater length and more often than the Christian Bible, and that Mary is much studied and revered. Can you speak at all to the meaning for Muslims today in various cultures of Mary, the mother of Jesus?
Thank you for that question. Mary is not only mentioned more times in the Quran, there is a chapter, the only woman that has a chapter named after her, is chapter 19, is Surah Maryam, which is Mary, the mother of Jesus. So there are 4 perfect women in Islam, and she is actually number 1. This is the status that Mary holds. Now, you were talking about the mother of Jesus. We have to say that Jesus is mentioned in the Quran more than the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him as well.
I'm going to suggest that we continue our questions, if it's okay with you, in our coffee hour.
Absolutely, yes.
So if you are thinking of other things, hold them, and we will have plenty of time following the service, which will be ending shortly. I get confused between that clock and this watch. We need to work.
Can I?